Chapter 2.
The polyphonic sound coming from his pants pocket announced a call on Tomás's mobile phone. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small chrome device. The screen displayed, "Parents."
Hello?
A familiar voice answered on the other end of the line as if it were less than a meter away.
Hello, Tomás?
Good evening, Mom.
Where are you, my son? Are you home?
Yes, I arrived this afternoon.
Everything went well?
Yes.
Oh my God, every time you travel, I worry myself sick.
Oh, Mom, stop. Nowadays, flying is perfectly normal. It's like taking the bus or the train, except it's faster and more convenient.
Still, it always worries me. Besides, you were in an Arab country, weren't you? They're all crazy over there, always blowing up bombs and killing people. It's horrible. Don't you watch the news?
Ha! You're exaggerating. They're not that bad. They're actually very nice and well-mannered.
Sure, until the next bomb explodes.
Okay. The fact is, everything went well, and I'm back.
Thank God.
And Dad, how is he?
Your father, well, he's managing.
Good. And you, Mom? Are you still surfing the internet?
More or less.
Don't tell me you're going on naughty sites.
Oh, stop saying nonsense. Listen, Tomás, your father and I are coming to Lisbon tomorrow.
You're coming tomorrow?
Yes,
Then we have to have lunch together.
of course. We'll leave early from here. We should arrive around 11 a.m., noon.
Then meet me at the Gulbenkian at 1 p.m.
At 1 p.m. at the Gulbenkian? Okay.
But what are you coming for?
We'll talk about it tomorrow, my son. We'll talk tomorrow.
The concrete building, with its horizontal lines, stood as a timeless structure, emerging from the greenery like a megalithic dolmen atop a grassy mound. As Tomás climbed the ramp, he gazed at the building with his usual enchantment, feeling as if he were standing before a modern acropolis. It was a metaphysical monument, a gigantic block seamlessly integrated into the wooded garden, as if it had always been part of the landscape. The Gulbenkian Foundation. He entered the entrance hall, briefcase in hand, and climbed the wide staircase. Long windows pierced the thick walls, embedding the building in the garden, the artificial structure in the natural landscape, concrete in the plants. He passed through the foyer of the large auditorium, and after knocking on the door, entered the office.
Hello, Albertina, how are you?
The secretary was filing some papers in a cabinet. She turned her head and smiled.
Hello, Professor. You're back?
As you can see,
Everything went well?
wonderfully. Is Professor Vital here?
No, he's in a meeting with the museum staff. He won't be back until this afternoon.
Well, I came to give him the report on my trip to Cairo. I don't know what to do. Maybe it's better if I come back this afternoon.
Leave it with me. When he returns, I'll give it to him. If he has any questions, he'll contact you, okay?
The historian opened his briefcase and pulled out several sheets of paper held together with a paper clip.
Okay, I'll leave my report with you. Have him call me if needed.
Tomás was turning to leave when Albertina stopped him.
Professor,
Yes?
you received a call from Greg Sullivan from the American Embassy. He asked you to call him back as soon as possible.
The historian retraced his steps and went to his office on the ground floor, a small room usually occupied by the Foundation's consultants. He sat at his desk and started working, preparing the lesson plans he still had to give before the end of the semester. The office window opened onto the garden. The foliage and lawn swayed with the wind, and the water drops splashing from the sprinklers sparkled under the morning sun. He called an assistant and settled the course details, promising to leave the plans he had just finished at the faculty's secretariat. After that, he searched his phone directory for the number of the American Embassy's cultural attaché and called him.
Sullivan speaking.
Hello, Greg. It's Tomàs Noronha from the Gulbenkian.
Tomás, como vai?
The attaché spoke Portuguese with a thick American accent.
Very well. And you?
Good too. So how was Cairo?
Normal. I think we're going to finalize the deal to acquire the stele. The decision now lies with the administration, of course, but my impression is positive, and the conditions seem acceptable to me.
Ha ha! I don't see what you find so special about these Egyptian relics. I think there are more interesting things to spend money on.
You say that because you're not a historian.
Maybe. Tomás, I've been trying to reach you because you need to come to the embassy.
Oh, what's going on?
It's a matter that, well, can't be discussed over the phone.
Don't tell me you have news about the proposal we made to the Getty Center. So they finally accepted in Los Angeles.
No, it's not that. It's something else.
Thomas murmured, trying to imagine what it might be. Maybe there was some news from the Jewish Museum. Ever since he'd started studying Hebrew and Aramaic, the American cultural attaché had been encouraging him to visit it in New York.
Very well. When do you want me to come?
This afternoon.
This afternoon? I don't know if I can. My parents will be here soon, and I still have to go to the faculty.
Tomás, it has to be this afternoon.
But why?
Someone has arrived from America. He took a flight just to come and talk to you.
To talk to me? Who is it?
I can't tell you over the phone.
Come on, tell me.
I can't.
Is it Angelina Jolie?
Ha ha! You really have a fixation on Angelina Jolie. This is the second time you've mentioned her.
She's a girl with, let's say, appreciable attributes. But if it's not Angelina Jolie, who is it?
You'll see.
Listen, Greg, I have other things to do than to deal with nuisances. You understand? Tell me who it is, or I won't come.
The cultural attaché hesitated on the other end of the line.
Okay, I'll give you a hint, but you must promise to be here at 3 p.m.
At 4 p.m.
Very well. 4 p.m. here at the embassy. I'm counting on you, okay?
Don't worry, Greg.
Perfect. See you later then.
Wait! You still haven't given me a hint.
Damn, I was hoping you'd forget.
You're clever. So, the hint?
It's confidential, you hear?
Yes, I hear you. But spit it out.
The American agreed, taking a deep breath.
Okay. Tomás, have you ever heard of the CIA?
What?
The historian thought he must have misunderstood.
We'll talk this afternoon. See you later.
The clock on the wall indicated 12:50 p.m. when there was a knock on the office door. The handle turned, and Tomás saw a familiar face peek in, a woman with curly blonde hair, with large glasses barring light green eyes, the same eyes he had inherited.
Can I come in?
Mom, is everything okay?
My dear son, how are you?
Hello, Dad.
So, my boy, how's it going?
They shook hands, each a little awkward with the other, as usual.
Everything is fine.
When will you find a woman to take care of you? You're 42 years old. You need to rebuild your life, my son.
But I intend to.
You need to give us grandchildren.
Of course.
Isn't there a way for you and Constanza to, well...
No, there isn't.
Thomas interrupted and looked at the clock, trying to change the subject.
Shall we go eat?
Okay, but we should talk first.
We'll talk at the restaurant. Let's go. I've reserved a table and...
We need to talk here.
Here? But why?
Because we need to talk alone, with no one around.
Tomás looked intrigued and gently closed the door to the room. He moved 2 chairs forward where his parents sat and took his place behind the desk.
So, what's going on?
His parents seemed embarrassed. The mother looked at her husband, indecisive, as if she was waiting for him to start talking. Since he remained silent, she went ahead.
Your father has something to tell you. Isn't that right, Manuel?
I'm worried because one of my colleagues has disappeared, Augusto.
Manuel, don't start rambling.
I'm not rambling. Augusto's disappearance worries me. What do you want?
We're not here to talk about Augusto.
Who is Augusto?
His mother rolled her eyes in disgust.
He's Professor Augusto Ciza, a colleague of your father's at the university. He teaches physics and has been missing for 2 weeks.
Oh, really?
My son, this story doesn't concern us. We're here for another reason. Isn't that right, Manuel?
Manuel Noronha lowered his head and inspected his nails, yellowed from many years of smoking. Sitting behind his desk, Tomás examined his father. He was almost bald, with only a circle of white hair left falling over his ears and neck. His eyebrows, thick and unruly, were graying, and his face was hollowed, his cheekbones so prominent they almost hid his small light brown eyes. And deep wrinkles cut across his face like scars. Looking closely, his father seemed old and thin. With a frail and dry body, he was practically just skin and bones. He was 70 years old, and age was starting to weigh on him. It was incredible that he was still teaching mathematics at the University of Coimbra. Only his lucidity and talent allowed it, but he still had to get special permission from the rector. Otherwise, he would have withered away at home long ago.
Manuel, come on, go ahead. I warn you, if you don't say anything, I will.
But say what?
I will tell him.
The mathematics professor was not a talkative person. Over the years, his son had grown accustomed to seeing him as a distant being, a silent man, always with a cigarette in his hand, locked in his attic office, clutching a pencil or chalk, cut off from life, a sort of hermit of abstraction. His world was reduced to Cantor's theories, Euclid's geometry, Fermat's and Gödel's theorems, Mandelbrot's fractals, Lorentz systems, the empire of numbers. He lived in a cloud of equations and tobacco, immersed in an unreal universe, far from people in an ascetic reclusion, almost ignoring his family. He was a slave to nicotine and algorithms, formulas and functions, set theory and probabilities, symmetry, pi and phi, and everything that touched on everything.
I went to the doctor.
Yes?
The old professor, understanding that he was expected to say more, shifted in his seat.
I started coughing some time ago, 2 or 3 years. At first I thought it was a cold, then an allergy. The problem is, my cough got worse, and I lost my appetite. I lost weight and began to feel weak. When Augusto asked me at that time to check some equations, I attributed this fatigue and weight loss to overwork. Then I started wheezing. Your mother asked me to go to the doctor, but I didn't listen to her. Later, I had severe headaches and bone pain. I stubbornly believed it was due to work, but your mother nagged me so much that I finally agreed to see Dr. Gouveia.
Your father is as stubborn as a mule, as you know. I almost had to drag him to the clinic.
Tomás remained silent. He didn't like the direction the conversation was heading. He anticipated the logical conclusion and understood that his father had a serious health problem.
Dr. Gouveia asked me to undergo some tests. They took a blood sample and some x-rays. The doctor saw the results and asked me to also get a CT scan. Then he received us in his office, your mother and me, and revealed that he had detected some spots in my lungs and an enlargement of the lymph nodes. He said that I still needed to have a biopsy to analyze a sample under the microscope and see what it was. I made an appointment for a bronchoscopy to extract a fragment of lung tissue.
The bronchoscopy was a butcher's job.
How else could I react? I would have liked to see you in my place, huh? That would have been something.
Her husband retorted, glaring at her resentfully, and looked at his son in search of an ally.
They inserted a small tube into my nose and down my throat to my lungs. I could hardly breathe. It was really horrible.
Tomás wanted to know, impatient for the story to end.
And what did the exam reveal?
Well, they examined the sample taken from the spot on my lung and from my lymph nodes. A few days later, Dr. Gouveia called us for another meeting. After a long speech, he finally said that I had... Grasa, you remember these things? What did he say again?
I'll never forget. He called it an uncontrolled proliferation of epithelial cells of the bronchial and alveolar mucosa.
Tomás stared at his mother, then turned to look at his father, then back at his mother.
What does that mean exactly?
Manuel Noronha sighed, the wheeze in his chest clearly audible.
I have cancer, Tomás.
Tomás heard him and tried to process the information, but was numb, unable to react.
Cancer? What do you mean, cancer?
I have lung cancer. At first, I didn't believe it. I thought they had mixed up the tests, putting my name on someone else's results. I left the office and went to see another doctor, Dr. Assis, who did more tests before giving me a long speech about having a troublesome problem that needed treatment, but without saying what it was.
Then Dr. Assis called me to ask me to come see him. When I got there, he told me what Dr. Gouveia had already revealed. He said your father had, well, this disease, but he wasn't sure if he should tell him.
So I had to face the facts and went back to Dr. Gouveia. He explained that my problem is called, it's a strange name, carcinoma something. It's a non-small cell lung cancer.
It's because of the tobacco. Dr. Gouveia said that 90% of lung cancers are due to smoking. And your father smoked like a chimney. How many times did I tell him, Manuel, you should stop?
Wait a minute, Mom.
Thomas interrupted. Overcome by the news, he looked at his father.
It can be treated, right?
Dr. Gouveia said there are several treatments to combat this problem. There is surgery to address the carcinoma, and there is also chemotherapy and radiotherapy.
And which one are you going to follow?
In my case, there are two complications that, according to Dr. Gouveia, are very common with this type of cancer.
Which ones?
My cancer was detected a bit late. It seems for lung cancer that happens in 65% of cases. Late diagnosis. The second complication stems from the first. Since the disease wasn't detected in time, it has spread to other parts of the body. Metastases have formed in the bones and the brain, and Dr. Gouveia says it's normal for them to also invade the liver.
Thomas felt paralyzed. His eyes were glued to his father.
My God, and what is the treatment?
Surgery is out. The tumors have spread, so my case is inoperable. Chemotherapy is also not an option, as it's only effective for small cell lung cancer. I have the other kind, which is apparently the most common type of lung cancer.
If you can't have surgery or chemotherapy, what are you going to do?
Radiotherapy.
And will that cure you?
Dr. Gouveia says I have a chance of getting through it, because at my age the disease doesn't progress very quickly, and I need to live with it as if it were a chronic condition.
Ah.
But I've read a lot about it, and I doubt he was completely honest with me.
Grazia Noronha squirmed in her seat, visibly upset by this comment.
What nonsense. Of course he was honest.
The mathematician looked at his wife.
Grazia, let's not start arguing again, okay?
Grazia looked at her son, as if she too were in search of an ally.
Do you see that? He's convinced he's going to die.
That's not it. I've read certain things and understood that the goal of radiotherapy is not to cure, but only to slow the progression of the disease.
Slow down. What do you mean, slow down?
Slow down. Make the progression more gradual.
How long?
I don't know. In my case, it could be a month, it could be a year, I have no idea. I hope I have another 20 years. But I might only have a month left, I don't know.
Tomás felt the world slipping out from under his feet.
A month?
Good Lord, what an obsession. Here your father goes again, dramatizing everything.
The old math professor erupted into a fit of coughing, and it was a while before he could pull himself together. He took a deep breath, and his brown eyes, brimming with tears, looked straight into his son's glassy green ones.
Tomás, I am dying.
This conversation is strictly confidential. Everything said here must remain between us. Is that clear? I work for the CIA at Langley, where I'm a counterterrorism agent.
Terrorism? In Lisbon?
He is called Augusto Caesar.
Spies, you mean?
He works for a unit named Al-Muqawama al-Islamiyya. Bin Laden's followers are not far from considering Shias as infidels.
But what does Hezbollah have to do with Professor Caesar?